All right, so I actually literally just got off my stream and somebody sent this to me. It was just released. It's about Colleen Ballinger, and I'm a big part of the video. It says Papa Gut, video about Colleen Ballinger, or videos about Colleen Ballinger, rather. Okay, I'm going to take a little watch, a little listen. I know people are very critical of my perspective. I'm going to be absolutely clear. I don't want to have some disagreements with the public narrative on Colleen Ballinger. It's not like fun. You know, I think people think that like, oh, I'm looking to be contrarian. I really am not. It's not fun. You know, I don't enjoy it. But like, I look at the situation and I don't quite think it is as extreme as grooming. You know, and we'll get into the specifics as we go. I'm always open to having my mind changed. I don't want, like I said, I don't want to disagree. But I look at this situation and I feel like some of these waters are getting muddied a little bit. As we get into the video, I'll be more specific about, you know, my take. But let's look at some of the criticism. So this is an intro, and then it's about Papa Gut here. That's up to about 30 minutes. The rest of it is like Rolling Stone, Huffington Post article, Cody Rants Return. These things, like those things, like, you know, I'm going to probably stop after my part. But hey, listen, let's see what we got here.
Hello. So it was noisy in my room, and it messed up the sound of everything because my microphone makes noise suppression sound absolutely balls. I would be on that better microphone wave, but I have to pay taxes, so that's not happening anytime soon. So enjoy the absolute.
Well, I mean, I guess, you know, from me, I use a Samsung Q2U. It's pretty inexpensive, so I think it's $70. Just figured I'd throw it out there. And then OBS has decent noise cancellation stuff. So
absolutely awful audio for the first half, and it fixes itself. But I don't have time to do this again, so I apologize in advance. Bye. Okay. Hi everyone, it's me again. And Switch Gang is present. And today we're going to be doing an update on the Colleen Ballinger situation.
Sounds like it's raining. Okay.
And this video will be updating you on two kind of main factors. Papa Gut's live stream and its highlights of his deep dive, as well as the various articles that have come out regarding the Colleen Ballinger situation and kind of Adam McIntyre and all his thoughts and that kind of stuff. A little bit lighter hearted than the last video, but first, links, socials, Amazon, Patreon, YouTube memberships, all the ways to support the channel, including affiliate links to What's on My Face, Gerard Cosmetics, and Every Jewels, and a bunch of other fun stuff like sources and things. I already said sources, but you know, or no, I didn't. I don't know, whatever. All down below, and I would like to take this time to thank my YouTube members and patrons with their names on screen. So, that's all.
I guess I sing sometimes too, so I can't be too cringed out by it, right?
Said and done. My last Colleen Ballinger video got demonetized, and then human reviewed and demonetized again for being too controversial. So,
well, probably because there are a lot of intense themes in it. Sure.
YouTube doesn't care that Colleen gets to run around and do all of these things, but then us talking about it is bad. So,
that's not really what it is. It's more that it just needs. Obviously, if there are very intense themes into a particular video, they have to demonetize it, so that advertisers don't mass exodus the platform. But okay.
Pray for them all.
I don't think, maybe I'm just overreacting here, but it sounds like there was almost a suggestion that YouTube thinks like what Colleen did was okay. I don't think that they have an opinion on it.
PlayStation Lord, that this one stays up. Who knows what's going to have two parts of the video today. We're going to have Papa Gut's live stream and the 35-minute follow-up video that he did, as well as
37 minutes.
The articles that have come out. So let's get right into it. I don't have a lot of time to film today, so we're going very fast. Part 1, Papa Gut's live stream and video. Okay. So Papa Gut's about 2 weeks ago from today being June 27th, hopefully this is out June 28th, has put out a comprehensive deep dive.
Wow, it's not June 28th, it's July 3rd, so I guess this video is a few days old. When did I release my Colleen Ballinger thing? Okay, let's continue.
Live stream about the entire Adam McIntyre and Colleen Ballinger situation. It was literally 5 hours and 43 minutes long, along with a 30-minute follow-up video and a response to Ryan Beard's critique on Papa Gut's perceptions of this whole situation. I'm not going to talk about the Ryan Beard response because it was just Papa Gut coping and seething by the end. If you want to know, there's funny tweets about it. So all this fun stuff together total to about 7 hours.
I will say, you know, everything I said in that video I obviously agree with, but I think that it is a failure for me to get that emotionally wrapped up into it and get that like explosive on there, which is something that like is obviously a pretty big flaw of mine. And I understand if you watch that video, you might come out of it going like, wow, this guy's unhinged, and you would have less respect for me or my perspective because of it. And so me carrying myself that way is obviously, well, not beneficial to me, but, or anybody really, so.
There's 7.5 hours of fun, educational Papaga content on this whole thing.
Sure.
So, you know, the opportunist, exploitative people that are defending Adam are no match for the somehow non-opportunist people who are defending someone who asked minors for pics of their butts. But
so really quick, I think that first of all, I think it's inappropriate. I think it's just wrong to try to make it seem like I was defending Colleen. My perspective is what she did was incredibly inappropriate, but it's just not grooming. And so it might seem like a defense, but I don't think that that's a defense. You know, for me, and I'll look up the specific. We'll do this now. But the way that I'm operating when it comes to grooming, it seems like a defense because I think the narrative has got so out of control to grooming, and I don't think it needs to be grooming for it to be bad. I don't think that she needs to have an intention to harm in order for harm to be done. Right? It's the same thing as if, let's say, you get into a car accident. Let's say I accidentally hit somebody with my car and they end up passing away. What a horrible thing. But if I hit them with my car and they, on purpose, and they passed away, it's still a horrible thing. My intentionality does matter, but the result is similar. And so there should still be a punishment, but we would obviously take that context or take the specifics into account when we're going to pass a judgment. And that's basically my perspective here, right? But grooming is an intentional thing. I've seen some criticism saying, well, no, grooming, maybe she did on accident. You can't accidentally groom somebody. You can't, right? So the definition of grooming is the action of attempting to form a relationship with a child or young person with the intention of sexually assaulting them or inducing them to commit an illegal act, such as selling drugs or joining a terrorist organization, a gang as well as part of it. You know, it doesn't always have to be a child or a young person. You know, there are certain situations where somebody can be susceptible to grooming. I think cult behavior as well. I think that there's a reasonable argument to be made about Andrew Tate grooming those women into, you know, performing sex work for him. You know, and this is a very intense definition to me, right? I've seen the criticism of people saying, well, Papa Gut, it doesn't need to be sexual grooming. You're right. And I think that the sexually inappropriate things are absolutely inappropriate. And as we go through here, we'll go through more of them. But like, for instance, she mentioned the aspects. I saw the screenshot, right? And so, you know, Adam made a comment about how he looked really good, and she's like, send pics, LOL. Incredibly inappropriate. But if we understand that she wasn't trying to sexually groom them, then we understand that that is an inappropriate action that never should have happened, but it didn't have the intention of trying to sexually assault Adam. And so that's where I'm coming from with that. Right, there was no intention there. People, like I was saying, were saying that, like, well, it doesn't have to be grooming. It can be a much less intense version of grooming. Personally, you know, I think seems to be a new concept. I feel like we are constantly shifting the definitions of particular things on the internet a lot of times, and that downplays how seriously harmful, like, real grooming is. It's not just making a friendship with somebody. It is such a deep, methodical, manipulative, disgusting practice, and the outcomes, and we've seen these definitions, are to do things like join gangs or terrorist organizations or to sell drugs or to sexually exploit a child. And it seems like a lot of people are making this argument of like, hey, Adam was groomed to exploit his labor. And that's a conversation I'm sure we'll have here. Or to use those people to groom them to send hate to people that, or make videos she disagreed with. I don't see that as grooming. But if we're going to say that it is, we have to at the very least admit that people are trying to use the energy from sexual grooming onto the newly defined form of grooming, and it's just not as severe as sexually grooming a minor, or trying to get them to join a terrorist organization, or trying to get them to commit like such a heavy illegal act. You know, the outcome is wrong, but like there's a reason that we have different proportionalities of different words, and that's the point that I've been trying to make. And maybe I'm just failing at that for whatever reason. Maybe I've lost my ability to communicate. I don't know. Maybe I just, you know, maybe I'm getting too frustrated and worked up because, you know, this is a very heavy topic. That's the perspective that I'm coming into here. I feel like the word grooming is constantly overused on the internet. Call me Carson a groomer for talking to a 17-year-old at 19. I feel like people are severely and significantly downplaying the word, and that's the perspective. I think people think that I want to help Colleen. I don't care about her. She means nothing to me. It's really the word, and I feel like disproportionate energy and how things are like rapidly spinning out of control with a lot of different words and a lot of different narratives. And so that's the part that I'm coming from. If you disagree, I get it. I understand why people are frustrated, but there is this attachment to trying to like take that sexual version. Personally, I think that sexual grooming is the worst type of grooming, and to apply it to like grooming to exploit labor, and which I don't know that I see that from what I've seen. There's a lot of people that liked her a lot and would send her content ideas, right? And I know that Adam became an intern for a while, which he was unpaid for running her Twitter for a period of time. For me, I personally think unpaid internships are wrong, but they're accepted in our society. So I just wouldn't consider that some kind of financial exploitation. I know that she had like a lot of incredibly inappropriate conversations about like her, like just conversations you shouldn't be having with young people in general. A 30-year-old shouldn't be sitting there and talking to 13, 14 or any teenager, 15, 16, 17 year olds about like how their divorce is going or any of some of the more intimate details. Those are so wrong. But again, that intentionality of Colleen matters enough to say like, is she a predator or does she have a massive boundary issue? I don't see predatory intent. The pictures, apparently she would send pictures of Trisha Paytas's OnlyFans around. Disgusting. What even made you think that? And if your prescription is, hey, I don't think she's a groomer, but she shouldn't have a platform because that doesn't make sense that she would be that inappropriate, I think that's perfectly fine. I haven't seen that. That's fine. Like, hey, I just don't think she should have a platform. Oh, that makes sense to me because I don't know how you would even come to the conclusion of like thinking it's appropriate. But when you look at the intention, it's to make fun of Trisha, right? Still very wrong. But that's the thing. I guess it's just maybe I'm a grooming word purist or something, but I really think that it's appropriate to maintain the definitions of words. And I know a lot of people you can look through and you could probably pick out aspects of grooming and be like, well, you can apply that to a lot of things. I find that similar to like if you look up autism or ADHD, and there are people who do this on social media, and you could look up like we'll actually do that. I know this seems like a silly exercise, but just follow me here. Look up symptoms of ADHD. Right, so and I have ADHD, like diagnosed, and like I've done my thing. That's why I'm bringing this up here. But being unable to sit still, especially in calm or quiet surroundings, constantly fidgeting, being unable to concentrate on tasks, all these different things, every single person can identify with. I think being unable to wait their turn, excessive talking, acting without thinking, we can identify with a lot of these different things. But there is a proportionality of the behavior. It's not simply it's not just simply being able to concentrate or not being able to concentrate. It is something that is so deep and almost like hardwired into somebody with ADHD. And so that's kind of how I feel like the grooming application is being here. It's like there are some things that might identify with grooming, but collectively and the intensity of which I don't necessarily think are there, right? And that's my perspective on it. That's where I really come from. That's what I've been trying to stress. And there's a total possibility that I've just failed at expressing that. I do think that some people are really worked up. I know I gave a pretty big dig into like the beauty community, and that's where she's coming from here, where she makes this statement here of like, oh, Papa Gut's saying a lot of them are opportunistic. To an extent, I would say that my understanding is a lot of people that were bullying Adam for so long were part of the beauty community. And I understand Colleen might have directed people in that direction. And I understand that. But at the same time, these are individuals who are adults that can look at the information and parse through it, and should like when I first watched the first Adam video, it made no sense to me that he would be getting hate for 3 years. I think that there are a lot of people who are adults who looked at the situation between Adam and Colleen, and they were originally being opportunistic, and they were like, okay, what is the status quo? What is the public saying that we can say about this? And kind of just going off. And I feel like a lot of that is that. I'm sure this person has done an exemplary amount of research on the topic, but then there's also people who have just accepted it as is because it's easy and they just make content, boom, And to bring it to that Ryan Beard video where I did have my meltdown, Ryan was one of those people who had a very he didn't really understand the situation very well. If you watch through it, with not even an hour after he released his video, he was already like, oh guys, sorry, like walking back a lot of what he said, because he was able to make a video, as long as it agreed with what the public was saying, without much criticism. And that's what a lot of people do here, is they kind of just make a video about a topic like, hey, listen, very bare bones understanding of what's going on. And you can criticize me for some of my shit interpretations. You can feel like I didn't do enough research, but I did do a considerable amount of viewing and seeing what was going on. Of course, everything that was currently available at the time that I looked at it. And there's a lot of people who just aren't doing that. And I feel like that's a lot of the people who have originally were going after Adam. And I feel like some of that energy has been maintained here. And so even if the public perspective you feel is correct, understand that that's part of my criticism as well. Is there's people who've always been just jumping on the bandwagon. So I know there's a lot for me to get out here, but I'm just trying to get my portray my perspective here.
No pun intended, I suppose. We are here. Yep. So before I get into this like deeper, I'm aware that I'm going to be hyper criticized, not only by Papa Gut's fan base, potentially, but also by Papa Gut himself.
I mean, it's fair for her to think that, because I did kind of go a little too crazy in my one video, so okay.
Probably on some sort of rage-induced live stream. I don't really function like these edgy, logical debate bro types on the internet. I don't strive for this supposed...
Really quick, is that how I come off? Because I consider that an insult. Do I come off as like a debate bro? I really try not to. I try to come off as somebody who does more of like a conversation. I guess with me yelling, I guess I really have to take the L on that one. Because I try not to. I try to have like reasonable conversation. Maybe I've been just failing to do that in these topics. I'm not gonna lie. Again, like I said, I don't want to disagree. I don't want to disagree with what the public is saying, because it is upsetting to me as well to be criticized, and to some of it feels a little disproportionate. You know, I do get a little upset when people say I'm a grooming defender. I've used my platform, especially on TikTok, to cancel real people that were engaging in like grooming type behavior. I mean, there was the one guy, Joe Robe, who was trying to, he was legitimately forming relationships with young people, and he was isolating them, trying to cut them off from their other friends. And he would do it to like people in the same friend group and be like, you can't really trust this person. You can't really trust this person. Trying to set some like young boys like who were 17 up to sleep with him when they were 18 by like, oh, we should hang out right on your 18th birthday. I'll bring alcohol and things like that, from what I remember. And this other guy, Gemini Official, who was like legitimately like, there's a TikToker who came forward, like who claimed that he like raped her when she was drunk. And that's not grooming behavior, obviously. That's just incredibly disgusting behavior. And then when he came back, from his cancellation when he was 20, he got kicked out of school for sexual battery and all this other sort of sexual thing, whole bunch of other stuff. When he came back from being canceled and he's 21, he's tried to hit up a 14-year-old girl and try to get like stuff from her. And, maybe that I might get too heated over that. And so like that might have contributed to some of my frustrations, and it's not right of me to act inappropriately, but, I'm just letting you know that it impacts me too. Okay. I get it. I'm not, so just saying.
To logic by
also, me yelling is not exactly logical. That is an emotional response. I'm also aware of that, so try to be better.
Forming a contrarian opinion, and
I don't think I'm not trying to form a contrarian opinion. I really am not.
Insisting that what is deemed to be logical is the most devoid of emotion and human decency.
I don't think I did that.
Because I actually studied philosophy, and I actually studied formal logic, and I actually studied argumentation.
I just don't remember saying that. But okay.
And nowhere does it say that people's emotions are not to be taken into account at all. That's literally what pathos is.
Just to be clear, maybe I communicated this poorly, so that could be on me. But like, I do a lot of that conversation. Like, I do like a lot of anti-manosphere conversation or content, and a lot of it is about like being emotional and how to properly be emotional as a man. Clearly, not yelling is not the right way to be emotional as a man, but talking about that and talking about how emotion is absolutely an aspect of like humans, and how it is very important and powerful, and how you need to men are emotional. clearly, again, by my outburst, that makes, like, that's an emotion. We just don't consider it as such. And that's a conversation about how we view feminism or femininity as less than in our society, and somehow, you know, right? So I'm aware of all this. If I didn't communicate that, if you're obviously you're not, it's ridiculous of me to think that you, as somebody who doesn't know who the fuck I am, watching like any take of mine on the first time, that you should be educated on the specifics of who I am or what I'm about. Excuse me, sorry. But that's just some context there. So if that's how I came off, that's my fault again.
One of the three components of argumentation in the most basic form, and before the debate lords come back again and go, well, that's like a really basic thing, I'm just saying the most basic thing, so I don't have to spend 3 hours prepping myself by telling you all of the compounding logic that comes from, you know, stoicism and system.
And I'm not a debate lord, just to be clear, even if it seems like it. There have been people who have approached me and asked me if I wanted to have conversations about the Colleen Ballinger situation or debates about it. And I didn't want to do them. And part of it's because I feel like some of these individuals, like being somebody who's good at debating isn't somebody who's right necessarily. It's somebody who's good at making it seem like they're right by kind of just, you know, arguing over you or engaging in like different debate tactics. And there's people who have asked me for conversations who they would have been pretty easy to roll over. But I do take this like topic seriously. Like I would never want to talk to just some random person about it. Because like I'm not trying to debate it, right? Like that, you know, that's why I'm trying to engage with this video here correctly, as opposed to the way that I have been doing it, which is definitely inappropriate in some ways.
Throw and all these foundational aspects, then to move into utilitarianism and those more common and more recent schools of thought to then move into feminist philosophy. You see what I'm saying? I don't want to do that.
Sure.
So what I'm saying is, you missed even the basics with that line.
I don't think that I made that line, but I understand why you think that.
Now, let's go. Next thing. So, if we get into the actual stream type deal, this supposed deep dive was a research stream, like what I do when I title them research streams. If a deep dive, you're supposed to know what you're doing usually before you go into it. At least know like who you're going to be talking about, such as knowing that it's Adam McIntyre, not Adam McIntyre.
Well, like it's very clear. Like it was a deep dive. Me saying his name wrong. Like it's just kind of just a thing I do with like everybody. I just kind of say things wrong. It's not intentional. Like I'm kind of like a boomer a little, I guess. Obviously, I know who I'm talking about. Adam and I, like we've had interactions before. You know, I know who it is I'm talking about. I know that you're attempting to be like, oh, this isn't a real deep dive. It is. Like it was all the information that was available at the time when I made it. Obviously, things move fast, but.
But alas, it is what it is.
Okay.
So Papa begins with looking at the video that Adam McIntyre put out.
Is it weird calling me Papa? It's got to be so weird.
In 2020, called Colleen Ballinger Stop Lying,
Sure.
In which Adam discusses his relationship with Colleen. Throughout the discussion, Papa Gut denounces, not necessarily denounces, but dilutes the conversations that Adam describes having with Colleen at most being inappropriate, and Colleen Ballinger being a dumbass.
The bigger, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's diluting. It's what word? I mean, I think it is incredibly inappropriate. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, not suitable or proper in the circumstances. It's not, I don't believe it's grooming, right? And so, like, what is it if it's not inappropriate? Based on my logic, like, let's say you follow me, like, what should I say that it is? Like, I think it's incredibly inappropriate. I'm sorry, my voice is just, like, shot a little bit. I don't know what word I need to use to be like. It's incredibly inappropriate. Like what she was having like conversations with fans, and she shouldn't have been like having friendships with them at her age, of course. But it's not some kind of a grooming thing, and so like it's incredibly inappropriate. That would be a proportionate response to me. I'm not trying to overload it. The question I have is because like yeah, you should have known from the start it was inappropriate to be that close with somebody that was that young. Sure, you know. So really, my question is like, did you realize that it was wrong, or are you just like, what made you realize you were wrong, right? Like, what? Why did it take the mother yelling at you to realize that? You fucking idiot. But okay, let's see the part where she's trying to like deplatform.
Now,
yeah. So my point there is, I believe Colleen had mentioned like, oh, I realized now that this was wrong in some capacity. And my thing was like, what made you what made you realize it was wrong for something that the rest of us would have known was wrong in the first place? Like, why did you have that gap in your understanding of the situation?
I want you to think for a second. Think about what we've heard about Colleen Ballinger. For back to my last video for a comprehensive timeline, if you have no idea what I'm talking about. But think about if you had a teacher who had a group chat with a bunch of minors and discussed personal life.
Sure. One thing I want to say is that like they are, of course, everybody she was talking about were minors. I think based on the conversation though, it's appropriate to recognize that like a minor could be a day old or a 17 and 364 days. And so I just think it's relevant to say like they were in their teenage years, in that stage of development. I don't know why I'm saying whatever. It's not a downplay, but obviously this behavior, if she was engaging it with a 7-year-old, would be exponentially worse than it would be with a 13-year-old. It's still very wrong, but I want to just like stay precisely on task when we're talking about it. Right, and the different things, right? Because a 13-year-old is not the same as a 17-year-old. It's not the same as a 7-year-old. It's not the same as a 25-year-old. It's not, and these are like different stages in development where different people. You obviously, as you get older, you become more aware. They're obviously still minors, and it's not appropriate, but it's something to just keep in mind, to keep proportionate, because it seemed like these were teenagers, right? A lot of these were teenagers in those teenage years. It doesn't make it okay, but I just want to stay on task when it comes to the conversation.
The divorce, make jokes about periods.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Ask for pics of the butts.
Right, so really quick.
Personal life.
The first thing I would say is, okay, let me just...
Who had a group chat with a bunch of... But think about if you had a teacher.
Okay.
Who had a group chat...
So really quick.
With a bunch of minors.
Really quick. And I understand how comparisons work, and I totally understand what she's saying, and I don't disagree that it's inappropriate. When I look at the difference between somebody who's a teacher and somebody who is I talked about being like a micro-influencer. It is generally normalized behavior for like a micro or an influence. I say micro because I talked about this in another video, but back in the day, people who were some kind of a celebrity, and that's what I meant, micro celebrities, they had somebody, a manager, to help them, guide them through everything, what you should and shouldn't do, and et cetera, et cetera. And so it's somewhat normalized to engage with your fans as some kind of a micro celebrity. We have a lot more accessibility nowadays through like Instagram and whatnot. And obviously it's wrong to get close to minor fans like this, or young fans, teenage fans, we'll say. But a lot of what I was talking about is like, you know, in general, it's more acceptable to engage in the behavior of being closer to your fans as like I guess as a celebrity status than a teacher in the same way. Like if a teacher felt the need to do a private group text, to me, that's more of worrisome than an adult or some kind of an influencer doing it. Because you know these students, you have a direct line of communication to them already. Why would you need some kind of a group chat would be the first question. You have to ask a very similar question to some kind of a celebrity individual as well, obviously. Or not even like a micro-influencer, somebody who's trying to have contact with their fans. Maybe I'm reading it the wrong way. I have a Discord. I look at it somewhat like that. You know, hey, you have a Discord. I have the ability to interact with some of my fans in my Discord. They had a group chat so she could do somewhat of the same. Maybe I'm just missing the mark on my comparison to like a Discord, which are very normalized. A lot of people have Discord so they can talk to their fans in some ways, versus like a group chat with a bunch of different people. And to my understanding, it was like an Instagram group chat with a bunch of different people. I would be questioning why a teacher would do that, but then there's probably reasons to do it in general. I know we're going to get onto like the specifics of what's going on into that, but maybe they would do it for some kind of like, I don't know if they were like a teacher that does like a sports event or something and they want to do mass texts, but that's just the one thing I wanted to say about the difference between that comparison.
And discuss a teacher.
Okay.
Who had a group chat with a bunch of minors.
Yeah. And
discuss personal life.
I would say teachers discuss their personal lives in class a lot. Like we would always try to unlock the teachers into talking about that in class. So we wouldn't have to, you know, talk about school.
Their divorce.
Sure.
Jokes about periods.
If the teacher talked about their divorce, I wouldn't care about that. Jokes about periods. For me, like periods are not like inherently sexual or anything. You know, I know that they had the weird tampon video, but for me, I the periods aren't like a sexual thing, and I think that we have like a societal issue of thinking that they're too disgusting. Yeah, obviously you shouldn't be talking about periods to everybody, but there's nothing sexual or like about the period thing. I don't really necessarily care about that.
Ask for pics of the butts.
For that, I think that that's an inaccurate description. Again, the conversation was so wrong. Adam said something along the lines of like, oh, I look good today. Or he might have said my ass looks good today. And she responded with like pics. If you think she actually wanted pictures and she actually did want pictures, that makes it exponentially worse. Understanding that our understanding is that she actually didn't want that picture makes us realize that like it's still inappropriate and it's wrong, but she wasn't trying to exploit sex out of him. So it does boil down to a really edgy joke, and everybody knew that it was a joke in the group chat. Still not behavior we should be interacting with, but she wasn't actually asking him for a pic of his ass, right? We already understand that. And I think that portrayal of that information makes me skeptical, because we need to be fully contextually accurate about every single bit of information. Again, like when people will constantly say, oh, she was asking if he was a virgin and asking what his favorite sex position, that's red flag central. 1000%. To me, that's like she wants to molest him. That's the only reason you would ask that question. And then you find out, well, he was asking for Q&A questions, and she gave those out as like suggestions. Now we go, this is very inappropriate. Why are you talking to somebody like that? But we know that like the intentionality wasn't to actually get those answers to that question. Because I could see somebody trying to sexually groom somebody and ask those questions, of course, because they're trying to start in the conversation about sex to exploit sex. But again, the public understanding and public narrative is that this wasn't sexual grooming, that these were really inappropriate jokes, which she should have never made. But they weren't with the intentionality of trying to sexually exploit somebody. And that matters, right? Even if it only decreases the intensity dial of what she did from the 10 to a 9, to me, that matters. And you could argue that I'm too hung up on these things. But for me, when I look at this inappropriate behavior, and this is something I should have brought up earlier, I like, what do you think should be the negative? What do you think should be the outcome, right? You might think she needs to be deplatformed, whatever. For me, if she was actually exploiting people financially from what she was doing, and asking inappropriate questions, which she was regardless. Class action lawsuits for people to be able to recover income from her for her apparently exploiting them financially, as well as like her not interacting with her fans anymore. I could still see her being able to move forward from this situation, right? Without, I don't think that she's a predatory person. I don't truly think, and again, her impact is very important, because she may have caused like a lot of harm to a lot of people and really upset a lot of people, but her intentionality also matters, right? And these things, like I said before, it's like the difference between intentionally hitting someone with your car versus accidentally doing it. It's just, even if it's only a slight difference, it matters. And that's the perspective that I'm taking there.
Asked a bunch of sexual questions.
Sure.
Now, that gives you the ick.
Sure.
Right?
No, absolutely. Especially
and I feel like there are more similar...
Especially if it's a teacher, and it's another thing to bring up, and I know I'm like talking a lot, but I have a lot to say. When it comes to the difference between a teacher engaging with a group chat versus an adult asking the same questions, we've already know the specifics. But there's also something very humanizing about actually seeing somebody in public. And when you have a lot of people, we see it in the comments all the time, when you have people you've met in person versus people in private, obviously, I think that there's a little bit of a different energy. There's almost like a disconnection from that person of who they are if you've never really seen them before, though she did see some of her people in the group chat. So it's something to bring up. But again, we know the intentionality wasn't to try to exploit or sexually exploit these young people, these teenagers.
Areas of the situation than you think. And before, again, I feel like you've probably just paused.
Okay.
If you are watching this, on pause now, because we've got reasoning for this one.
Pause what?
3 reasons I've drawn this comparison, okay? 1, I am 6 months out from a master's degree in secondary school education in the province of Quebec, and just in Canada in general, with a teacher certification to boot.
Okay.
So, I know the legality personally. I don't have conversations with my wife regarding the legality. I study the legality.
Okay. It's fair. I do talk about my wife too much. It is cringe. I get it. I get that I shouldn't be bringing her degree that she's earned, especially when she doesn't have a perspective on this situation. Of me to just be like, well, my wife is this. I mean, obviously, like, it's just pathetic of me to even do that in the first place. Like, I have no defense for it. It's just like loser shit. So. And
I know about that specifically, especially when it comes to conduct with minors. 2, a student-teacher interaction presents a strong disproportional power dynamic between a young person and someone that they potentially look up to.
Absolutely.
Similarly to that of Colleen Ballinger and Adam McIntyre at the time.
Absolutely. The one question I would say, because this person seems, obviously they're very educated. My understanding, I could be totally wrong, is that when you go, and I think that she's basically saying this, but when you go to school to be a teacher, one of the course curriculums, I imagine, is a really deep conversation about how impactful the power dynamic is of you as a teacher versus a student. And that's not a level of education that anybody gets on the internet. I know for me personally, a lot of the content that I made on TikTok back in the day was a lot of edgy humor. And I like edgy humor. I'm an edgy guy. I'm also like very left-leaning in my politics, right? And so I would make edgy humor and I would make jokes, and I would make jokes that would, take shots at everything. It took me a long time to understand that those jokes, even though they're jokes to me, a lot of other people interpret that as me being actually bigoted in some capacity. You know, if I make a silly joke about how, you know, women shouldn't vote or something, to other people that on social media, especially younger people, those people take that a lot more, can take that a lot more seriously, right? I still make edgy humor in my stuff, but it's not clipped. It's not just a 15-second joke. It's now like a half an hour video, usually about a social justice topic, and then it's just throwing in like a silly little joke there. So, you know, I'm kidding, but that's something that, like, you know, it takes you a long time to understand like the impact that you can have on your audience, that the way that you speak, you have to be very careful about the exact specifics. Obviously, even I'm failing to interpret things or explain myself well in some other videos, like some of my previous videos. And so I feel like that, at the very least, the understanding of the power dynamic, I feel like as a creator takes a long time to understand. And maybe that's me being, because I was a big creator on TikTok at one point. I know people I talked about before. I had like 2.5 million followers. I was verified. I was a big content creator. And so there's nothing prepares you for the massive impact that your word is going to have onto people until you slowly learn about it. And so maybe I'm being too charitable because of that, because of my experience as a content creator and not understanding how negatively impactful my words could be. But that's just something that I'm also operating with. It's like the difference between who Colleen is versus somebody who's a teacher who goes like a 6-year education on how to specifically act properly, not just how to teach, but how to teach kids, and understanding that your roles are, the different boundaries and the different rules. And I would say that there's a reason that we have to teach people who want to be teachers those specific things, because we don't come inherently with these understandings, if that makes sense.
3, I want to give you something that's clear and tangible to kind of form that internalized reaction that I'm feeling when I am going into these things, to kind of give you a window into what my perceptions are and the strength of this forceful conversation that I will be putting forward. Because again, emotionalist arguments are not logical arguments. I don't understand who decided that. I think that's a modern school of thought,
but
typically, which has been kind of drawn from the... It's drawn from actually like super classical philosophy, like Aristotle.
I think we have to obviously take emotions into account when it comes to human interaction, 1000%. But I also think that having overly emotional reactions is wrong. And I think my argument was that some of the reactions here are overly emotional. In the exact same way where me yelling and screaming in that one video is an overly emotional argument that is wrong, right? There's an amount of emotion that we have to take into context, 1000%. And then there's also some that we have to cut through to get to like what's actually happening. And I see people who are understandably upset for Adam. Makes perfect sense that they would get us upset. But, you know, I guess when you look at it in like a court of law, is my best way. We'll go back to that situation with somebody hitting somebody with a car. You generally have like 3 parties. You have the victim party. You have the plaintiff, the defendant. No, that's not right. That doesn't really make sense to me. The victim, the perpetrator, and then you have like the jury party. For me, when I look at this, it seems like a lot of people are fans of Adams, of course, or sympathetic to him, of course, and they are part of, like, they're adding themselves to that victim party as for almost part of his family in some capacity. And that's not me criticizing you or for doing that. That's where I see. So it's like, hey, I'm on Adam's side. And I am like 100% on Adam's side. And that makes sense. And then, of course, nobody's going to be on her side because she's a fucking idiot. And then there's the jury party who parses through the information and goes like, okay, like this is what I'm seeing. I understand it has a negative impact, but I also understand the intentionality of it. And that's the area I'm trying to be in, right? I'm trying not to be biased. And maybe we'll say sometimes I understand that like I'm a pretty blunt guy, and sometimes maybe I am too logical. I don't even want to say logical. Maybe sometimes I'm not emotional enough in some ways. Clearly the yelling is emotional. Maybe I'm not as empathetic as I need to be, right? I'm not an empath, okay? I do have crystals though, so it makes me closer to being an empath. I have this, right? And so maybe I'm missing the mark there. But what I'm trying to sit more in like the jury area where I try to parse the information and go like, okay, here's the criticism here's this. Not get rid of the emotion, but to just try to understand, like trying to parse through it. Because I see a lot of sensationalization. And I think that even some of the ways that she's portraying some of her information was like, oh, she was trying to get pictures of his butt. But we know that that's not true, right? We know that that was a really inappropriate joke. That to me is a sensationalized version of what happened. And so like that, I think, is in tow with some of the I guess, emotional aspect of it. I'm just trying to stay on course with exactly how, you know, I feel, I guess, at least we should talk about these. I'm fucking rambling. We're 40 minutes in. Let me continue.
Saying that women were men with birth defects who were essentially the emotional representation and downfalls of the beings that which produced them, that being the fathers. But I think, you know, whatever 400 something, whatever BCE is a little bit out of date for proposing these arguments, especially because if we put in this clip from Papa Gut's reaction to Mr. Beard, maybe the women aren't the ones that are emotional in the first place.
Yeah, I'm not on. Men are just as emotional, if not more emotional than women. Men just manifest their emotions through anger. Oh, every time I have a take about Nick Merckx, oh, I fucking agree with Nick Merckx. Oh, I'm gonna fucking, like, you're a little baby, you're a dumb little baby, and then somehow people take them as just as credible as like a fucking 30-something-year-old person that's constantly trying to have the right conversation. Why? Fuck you. Fuck, you're wrong. It's not grooming. To all the people that are saying it, I'm sorry. I know that you're offended, but this is a fact of the matter of the situation. That's what it is, and own it. Like, you can't even own your own take in your own video. It's a 20-minute video, and the backlash. I think I was talking about how Ryan, like, very quickly, like, walked back a lot of what he was saying, because Ryan was also saying that it wasn't grooming, and then he was like, no, intentions don't matter in this video. She should be she should be kept away from children, which suggests to me that she should lose her kids as well. That's the point I'm making there. Obviously, the yelling gets in the way of some of that, but I don't necessarily disagree with my perspective here. That's just already caused you to shift towards what they're saying, and then you're going to down this. I think that there's a level of truth that too. People were harassing him for getting parts that they felt he was wrong on, and instead of holding strong, he was instantly like, "Oh, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. I made a mistake." So only two things are possible: either he did absolutely no research on what he was talking about, or he's shifting with whatever people are saying because he's afraid of backlash. So those are really the only two possibilities based on that. Because that comment was less than an hour after he posted his video talking about how he made a big mistake already. So I have, if you're wondering why I have this frustration, it's because later we'll discuss how essentially Papa Gut says that all of us who are talking positively about Adam McIntyre are disgusting opportunists who are drama channels who like make videos every time Trisha Paytas farts. And there's a level of truth to that. I mean, like that Michaela girl, hopefully I'm saying your name right, is constantly harassed by drama channels, you know, for like such benign things. There is something about the drama community, man, that like there is a hyper obsession and focus with people like Shane Dawson. And I know people will be upset because Shane Dawson has done some really bad things in the past. But for me, again, I'm a little bit of a lefty. I look at the criminal justice system, and I know this is a weird comparison, but I look and it's like we're having conversations about how to properly reform people who engage in bad behaviors that go to jail, right? And so my thing is like, if I advocate for that, how can I not advocate for people on YouTube who have not done anything nearly as bad as people who are in jail? How can I not advocate for them to have a pathway to redemption as well? And when like every other video is about what Trisha has done in the past, which are bad things, and what Shane has done in the past, which are bad things, I have to look at them and be like, well, how come there's no like, why are we so obsessed with these failures if they've changed the behavior, right? That's where I come from. Like, I need to be consistent. If I don't look at somebody's bad behavior in the fucking YouTube atmosphere and go like, there should be a pathway to recovery, then like, how am I supposed to also be able to advocate for prison reform and actually giving people pathways of getting out of prison better off than when they went in? Because right now you go to prison, they don't do anything for you. In many cases, you just become a slave to the system and have to work for like 8 cents an hour. And then you come out with nothing better for yourself, and people just don't want to hire you because you're a felon. I have to be consistent on both. That's how I interpret that. And like the drama channels community, they seem to be very, very obsessed with everything that everybody in that, makeup community especially has done wrong, and they just don't let a lot of things go. And I see that, like, I haven't seen that much of an obsession in any other community. And that's where I'm coming from with it. I think that there are a lot of opportunists, and maybe it's unfair of me to label everybody as an opportunist. That is definitely a reasonable criticism, but that's where I'm coming from with that. And most of the drama sphere are either gay men or women, okay, or kind of matters, but NB types, but just typically not cishet men. What does that matter? So this denouncing of the entire section of the internet stems from deeper arguments. I don't think that that's true. I know what she's trying to say, that like I'm somehow like homophobic and transphobic for like people who are non-binary and sexist because I'm denouncing that. That's just not reasonable to say. Again, you could scroll through some of like these these drama type news channels and look at some of the things that they're saying. Again, it's very obsessive with some like just a select few: Trisha Paytas, Shane Dawson, what's that? Jeffree Star, the Michaela girl, Jacqueline Hill. It's a kind of like a rotation of like, well, what are they doing today, and a lot of like hyper focusing and disproportionate criticism onto these individuals every single day. I think that it's unfair to try to say that I must have like some kind of deep seated homophobia and sexism specifically because I can recognize bad behavior in these other communities. I just think that I also think that's kind of lazy. I think it's a little bit lazy to suggest that I must just be some kind of like a bigoted individual simply because I criticize like reasonable things to criticize.
I think what Papa Gut does is he touches on a bunch of things really lightly and presents it as this like emotionalist means logical idea, and then carries that forward as opposed to actually diving into where these perceptions are coming from in the first place, which is one of the most fundamental components of criticism and in-depth, purposeful, and accurate criticism. So some may say, very likely Papa Gut will, that this is a hyperbolic comparison at best. The teacher to student to Colleen Ballinger, Adam McIntyre comparison. I
don't think it's hyperbolic. I just think that there are some different boundaries, especially since we know specifically her intentions weren't to try to be predatory. So in that teacher instance, like we don't know, like why would you be talking those questions? If it was a joke from the teacher, it's still inappropriate behavior and it's unprofessional behavior, of course. But we wouldn't call them like a sexual predator in some capacity, right? And that's kind of what I'm hitting on there. But we know Colleen wasn't trying to sexually exploit any of these people. So.
Just me. But I feel like many people underestimate the power that influencers have in the kind of modern day. And I don't care.
I'm acknowledging that, though, because I think a lot of other influencers are, whether it's intentional or not, being hyperbolic in this scenario.
What people are going to say, well, Colleen Ballinger was a YouTuber in 2010. She was talking to Adam McIntyre up until 2020.
Okay.
The modern influencer comparison, the conversations with their fans, all of that kind of stuff have been exposed for years by then.
Maybe I just wasn't privy to it. But for me, parasocial conversation really wasn't happening until like that 2021, 2022 aspect or area there. And so maybe I just got it wrong with that. I could have just got it wrong with that. Maybe. I guess. To me, I mean, I don't see... Okay. Yeah, sure. Maybe.
The initial James Charles scandal had already happened. There were other... I think...
Sure, but James Charles' issue was that he was not verifying ages before he was talking to people. That was his like biggest issue. That's not a parasocial relationship conversation. I would say that like we didn't have the correct conversations about parasocial relationships even up until now. Even when, again, with the Call Me Carson thing, a 19-year-old talking to a 17-year-old, there are people who will like. There's nothing inappropriate about that, even if it's sexual. And people will be like, "Well, you don't understand. There's a power dynamic." But the thing is that power dynamics existing fundamentally doesn't mean that it's being abused, right? So because a person might interact with another person who is rich or famous, that inherently isn't a problem. It's the proportionality of what's going on and what that person in that power dynamic could potentially extract. Like, let's say you have like a famous guy. Let's take it away from like, a kid area. But let's say you have like a guy who he's rich and he's famous and he makes a lot of money, and a girl who's not rich and famous wants to just have sex with him or date him. She should be able to do that. He needs to be aware of the potential power that he has because of his status and his money, and he should never leverage that. Be like, well, I'm rich and famous, so if you don't do something for me, I will hurt you in some capacity, or if you do this for me, I will hurt. That would be sexual exploitation. But if somebody found somebody more attractive because they were rich and famous, that's not like a problem. And I'm just talking about the fundamentals of power dynamics, and we're still getting that wrong in 2021. I think that Call Me Carson thing is, and you see these conversations every day. We still don't really have the right conversation, in my opinion, about power dynamics. Right? The issue that Colleen interacting with her fans, there's no issue fundamentally with interacting with your fans as a 30-year-old, but it's the closeness that you're getting with Colleen that's the problem. If she was just like talking to them in comments, there would really be no problem, or even I guess through a Discord, I really wouldn't see a huge problem. It's when it gets more personal that it becomes a problem, of course. And like that's a whole, but I feel like we're still not getting it right today. And so I think it's fair for me to say like, hey, I don't think that the boundaries are very clear on everything. I don't think that they're inherently clear, because we're still having these conversations every single day. You see other creators who say like rich, famous men should never, date, women who aren't rich or famous because they have a power dynamic. I've seen people say that, very popular creators, and it's like, well, that infantilizes women. Women should be able to make the choice, so of course, as long as they're in a consensual age range of who they want to date. Maybe they like a guy with a lot of money. Maybe they like a guy that's very famous. As long as those bits of power aren't being abused by a guy, aren't being leveraged in this way to engage in like a more exploitative relationship, right? So
I think Call Me Carson had already happened.
Yeah, but Call Me Carson he didn't do anything wrong. So again, maybe she thinks that it's wrong. I just disagree. This was a 19-year-old who was he was having sexual conversations with a 17-year-old. There's nothing. If it was a 19 and 17-year-old in like the real world, we wouldn't be having any problems. That was a situation that once again got incredibly sensationalized by people that I've seen you've criticized before. For no, like, it went out of control.
Unless that was 2021, am I getting my timelines wrong? But regardless, there were a lot of like exposed YouTubers for having conversations with minors and those types of things.
Right, but not feeling. But you grouping Carson into that, it makes me feel like you have a little less credibility here, because that's a 19-year-old talking to a 17-year-old. That's why I talked before. Remember when I was like, hey, what is a minor? It could be it could be a day old. It could be 17, 365 days. Just like an adult could be 18 or like 1,000 years. Well, I guess 115. I don't know what the oldest person is, right? So like you have to be very specific here. Carson didn't do anything wrong. You know, he didn't do anything morally wrong. I don't know what to tell you. You know, if you want to argue that he got pictures and that would be illegal, sure, that's fine. But that's not. We wouldn't consider that morally wrong, because if he was having sex with her in real life, nobody would have a problem. 1917 is not a predatory age range in any capacity. He never leveraged his money or fame. He never said, if you fuck me, I'll give you this, or if you don't fuck me, I'll hurt you in some capacity with my fame. He never did anything like that. So, you know, it would be interesting if you could give us more of your specific perspective on some of those topics. But I feel like if you criticize me for being very vague in some aspects, that's something I feel like you're being very vague in when it seems like you think that Carson got treated justifiably when he didn't.
By this point.
So, okay.
Not only do influencers have money and notoriety,
Sure.
YouTube creates a strong parasocial bond that creates a rabid fan base that can thus be weaponized. That is often comprised of kids who are idolizing someone. And in
absolutely.
the case of Colleen Ballinger, someone who was hiring their fans, something that also Papa Gut said was totally fine, which
I think it is fine.
I have a huge issue with.
Hold on. I'm not saying it's okay. It is fundamentally fine to hire your fans. What are you talking about?
That is often comprised of kids who are idolizing someone. And in the case of Colleen Ballinger, someone who was hiring their fans, something that also Papa Gut said was totally fine, which I have a huge issue with.
Fundamentally speaking, hiring your fans, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, like I just watched a video, the Act Man video, which was very good about IShowSpeed, where like Ludwig at some point was like, yeah, I hire some of my fans as editors. Who else would you hire? Who else? Hiring your fans is not a bad thing, fundamentally speaking, at all. I mean, that would be like if a rock band couldn't hire their fans that love their music so much to help them with like audio checks. Why wouldn't you want a fan? Now, again, if your argument was that person might be more likely to take a shit deal, that's fine, but that's a different conversation from fundamentally hiring fans. That's who you would want to. If I was looking for an editor, which I'm not, I would only hire a fan. And I would want to give them a good deal, of course. But like, when am I supposed to hire somebody who doesn't like my content? Then they're not going to know what's funny. They wouldn't be able to find those clips that like are popping. Look at any content creator who has like an introduction that's like a mesh of a few different clips, and then it cuts to their video. You need a fan to be able to identify those interesting moments. So fundamentally speaking, there's no problem with hiring fans. That's what I'm saying. The power dynamic exists there, but it's not a problem unless you exploit it. Unless you say, I'll hire you, but I won't. Like, if you wanted to argue, well, she did an internship, she should have paid him to do the Miranda sings. That's perfectly reasonable. That would be like, hey, I think that's wrong. You might see that as an inappropriate aspect of the power dynamic. I personally understand where she was coming from. Hey, run this account for a little bit. If it goes well, I'll start paying you. And then it fell through because she got canceled for some like bullshit. Because again, people were going after her for queer baiting, which is just dumb as shit. And then she, it seemed like, passed on some of the blame to Adam, which I think was inappropriate. Like, she was the adult; it's her account. You know, if you're gonna let somebody say something on your account, like, you know, you take the blame for it. Even though, again, I don't think that the queer baiting was an issue. Maybe that's just my cis het normative perspective. But fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with hiring fans. It's preferred because you want somebody who likes your content, because they'll be able to edit better for your content, or whatever the specific thing is. I'm going to editing because that's the only thing I would really need a fan, somebody to hire for, but I don't. But okay.
And 3, I love.
Well, yeah, it makes sense to hire fans because they're passionate about your stuff, and like, you're best off hiring people who really enjoy your stuff when doing stuff for you. Absolutely makes sense. Sure. Yeah.
Supporting their dreams and passions in any way.
That makes sense.
Will not hire people who are my fans.
Why?
Or if there are people who know me that want to work for me, let's say in regards to like a commission, let's say for my avatar that's like, you know, right there or whatever, that's different.
Why?
In the sense of it's a one-off interaction and I pay them.
Why? Why is it that doesn't make any sense? Because so you can only hire people if you only do it by commission. You couldn't give them a long-term contract. That seems weird.
I'm not kind of developing these long-term relationships and then being like, please work for me for free type deal.
That's not the same. If you're like, hey, this bullshit that she had people work for free, great criticism. Run with that to the fucking moon. Fly with it to the moon. But fundamentally, it seems like this creator's having a hard time differentiating information that should be very basic to, basic for us to understand. It's no problem hiring fans when you abuse that relationship in some capacity, or that's the problem. But hiring fans fundamentally isn't an issue. I don't really understand how you couldn't understand that. To me, that doesn't make sense that you would have that perspective, honestly. I don't get it. I don't really understand how that works at all. I imagine every single football player or somebody who does a sport is a fan of every team, or I'm sure that there are plenty of people who play a sport who are fans of the teams that they get hired to. Are you saying that that's abusive? Because what you're saying is you can't hire fans. Why would that be different? You should be hiring fans. In fact, those fans probably like you, and they want to dedicate, like, that's like a dream job. Imagine being a fan of somebody and they hired you to do something and they paid you like well, as long as they're paying you correctly, of course. You would think that was great. Why are you so against just hiring fans? It just makes me feel like you don't really understand power dynamics well. You can't. The existence of a power dynamic does not make it inherently abusive, right? Your parents have a power dynamic over you as you're growing up. That doesn't mean that they're abusing you. They could, of course, but that doesn't mean that they inherently are, right? You were talking about, you brought up a lot of different things like the gay community and stuff. So like, or in women feminism, and in a relationship, a man inherently has a power dynamic over a woman. He's physically stronger than her. He could abuse her, and in fact, we've seen a lot of that in the past, which is why we need things like what is it called, no fault divorce. That's why we need robust programs. But the existence of being in a relationship with somebody because you have a power dynamic over them, that doesn't make it abusive. A man being with a woman isn't inherently abusive. He could start abusing her, of course. She could abuse him as well. But you get my point. Men are much more likely to express themselves angrily and much more likely to hit. That's the only point they're making. In a relationship, a woman might make twice as much as a man. Do you think that them being in a relationship together is bad? No. Like, she makes more money. She has a power dynamic, but that's still not inherently abusive unless she started leveraging that and putting that over his head, right? And so, like, this is the problem. Is I feel like this person is conflate. Like, every power dynamic that exists is inherently abusive to them, and that makes me question, like, your perspective on things in general.
Colleen is then bringing forth not only influence, high socioeconomic status, but also
Absolutely.
potentially a gateway to their dream jobs.
Sure.
And if Colleen tosses them to the side and is like, I don't want to use you, could also potentially stop people who could be really positive in the platform from moving forward. And
I don't understand what this means. Are you saying?
Just in general kind of brings forth this ideology that you're not worth much if you're just there for Twitter, despite the fact that these kids having ideas of social media demographics, what kind of statistics there are, the parameters in which people reach out to the content, and what is trending is actually very impressive, especially for people as young as Adam was, for example, when he was doing the post. And again, the prevalence with Colleen...
So are you saying that she should have just never hired him? Because that's just wrong. I mean, the work laws protect people that are like 14. I mean, maybe that's just me being pious. I started working at 12 years old because I'm just a conservative. Pick yourself up by your boots. I'm just kidding. But I did start working when I was 12 years old. It's not inherently abusive to like work. It's okay to work for somebody. Like I worked for my uncle for a long time in a deli. There was a power dynamic there. He was my uncle. I don't know if you knew that. And he was my boss and paying me. But I still worked out great, just fine. I don't like, again, if you want to criticize the lack of payment there, that's perfectly fine. I personally don't see it as a big deal. It's like internships are very normal. I think that they shouldn't be. We should do more paid internships. I don't think that unpaid, if you have the ability to pay, you should be paying. But then there's also a conversation about work experience and whatnot. Like you can, a lot of people, I'm sure she's even done it. Maybe she's not, but for their master's program, a lot of time will have to do unpaid labor. They'll have to go and volunteer their time at a particular place or a particular thing. You get paid in experience sometimes. I think that can be okay, frankly. Ideally it should be paid internships. But I did an unpaid internship when I have like a degree in game and web design. This was when I was very young. So I did an unpaid internship. It was part of my curriculum. I had to get through school. So you would do an unpaid internship at a company. I did it for like a web design company. I don't think my labor was exploited. So I just don't. I don't see the I don't see the exploitation of labor there. And that's what a big proponent seems to be of, like, how is it grooming because of that? And I don't see that. I don't see any exploitation of labor. Hopefully she brings up more stuff, though. We're only about halfway into her video.
It's also that she admits to hiring fans and vets them, which essentially presents it as an unpaid training, which is like,
Okay.
you know, dissolves professionalism, but also is like illegal in a lot of places.
Maybe.
Like, if I'm pretty sure if you're not doing an internship, like through university, like teaching internships, stagiaires for medicine, stuff like that, then you cannot have unpaid training. Papa Gut, throughout this whole conversation, talking about Colleen.
If that's true, I don't really. I mean, maybe I'm just wrong. I mean, unpaid training usually refers to people having to go to, like, a training course when they're already hired for a particular job. You know, if we are being, well, this is one of the problems when it comes to conversations about social media, is that we're very far behind when it comes to updating our laws for different types of online activity. We know, like, Congress is dog shit about, like, implementing different things. You know, that's why we had, like, a whole fair use thing with Ethan Klein a while, like, you know, somewhat recently. You know, I know that was like years ago, but because we're so far behind on our laws and whatnot. So maybe that is true, that unpaid type of a thing. I mean, then it gets into a conversation about, like, what is work. You know, again, maybe I have more of a dated perspective. You know, running a Twitter is usually part of somebody's job. It's not, I would say it's not a whole lot of work by itself, but maybe that's just my dated perspective on it. You know, I'm more used to a little more traditional work. Again, I still don't think that this would fall under some kind of exploitation, you know, even if she's in the wrong specifically, because, like, oh, untrained. I mean, maybe I'm wrong with that. I don't think that hits the bar for grooming in any real capacity, but okay.
Talking about Cody, talking about unpaid training. Papa Gut, throughout this whole conversation, talking about Colleen, talking about Cody, talking about Adam, seems to fixate on this concept of sensitivity that edgy people tend to conflate as a lack of intelligence. Again, high emotional drive does not necessarily mean that they are not intellectual, and does not necessarily mean that the argument they're putting forward is invalid if they are not stable in presenting it. And aside, but it feels a little bit dystopian to me to be...
I will say, so far, you've been very unstable in your ability to talk about power dynamics. Just saying. So
taking apart the concept of if a child is being groomed or not by an influencer over, like, some sort of, like, Diablo type, World of Warcraft type B kind of game.
Well, what's Diablo for? So
gameplay. It's like, girl, holy moly.
If you want to say that maybe I wasn't paying attention enough because I was playing Diablo, I disagree, but that's fine. But just because I'm playing a video game doesn't mean that I'm, like, is that making me unqualified? Is your argument that's too unprofessional, maybe? Okay.
The live stream essentially was Papa God granting Colleen Ballinger grace while adding, I don't like Colleen in all the time in order to kind of
I don't think I'm giving her graces. I think people are perceiving it as that. Listen, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that there's a lot of people coming into the Colleen Ballinger situation saying we're already emotionally provoked. They've seen the tail end of, like, here's the prescription to what... This is most people's interaction with Colleen, especially nowadays, because you see tons of memes and whatnot, and you see her fucking pathetic response, and people are gonna come into it with, like, oh, she's already a groomer. Like, they're already having that idea. This is like a priming tool, and then they go through the information, and then they're parsing all that information, and they're passing it through their perspective of already what's happening. When I go into any topic, I don't come into the topic agreeing with any particular anything. I try to be unbiased, and maybe I fail sometimes. So when I started with that, I wasn't starting like, oh, she's a groomer. I'm starting with, like, let's see what's going on. And then I formulate an opinion. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm right, but I would say a lot of people are going through the perspective of, like, oh, she's already guilty, and they're looking to find evidence as such that she's guilty of being a groomer. She's guilty of being incredibly inappropriate. Absolutely. But not a groomer. And but you're looking for that. Add that in with, like, anytime someone disagrees with... there's been a lot of backlash towards me. People calling me, like, a pedophile, a groomer myself. And it is what it is. It's upsetting, of course. People don't want to be hit with that type of, like, hate. And so even if you think I'm wrong and I'm, like, an idiot and a moron, understand that, like, if you said Papa God is wrong, he's an idiot and he's a moron. Obviously, I disagree, but that seems to be relatively proportionate to the situation. Going and talking about how I'm, like, a groomer pedophile intentionally. misreading some of the words that I said. People were like, well, you said that grooming is okay. I never said grooming was okay. I was having a conversations about different forms of grooming in one of the video. It wasn't a conversation with a person, but it was like a, talking out loud. And I was talking about there's predatory grooming, which is what I've been talking about, sexual exploitation, try to get somebody to join a gang or a cult and using like these methodical predatory methods versus traditionally how we've used the word grooming, which is just prepare somebody for a thing, right? Like I'll look up the definition of grooming like right here. Sorry, I don't do edits on my videos, guys. So you have different versions of it. The practice of preparing or training somebody for a particular purpose or activity. That's a non-predatory version of grooming. And I was saying that part is okay. Like traditionally, we would you just groom. Oh, I'm going to groom somebody to be the next manager of a company. I'm going to groom somebody to be an Eagle Scout. I was actually using a specific reference where an anecdote where I was at an Eagle Scout thing and one of the representatives of the state came up to give these young young men really their awards, and they were like, good job to the parents and the leadership and the troop did an excellent job of grooming their kids to be, or grooming these young men is what she had said, to be Eagle Scouts, right? You can groom somebody to work at Starbucks. It's the traditional way, and that's the conversation I'm having. And you see a lot of disproportionate interaction, and that's where I'm talking about, is that the atmosphere is very toxic, and it doesn't allow for people to explore information themselves. It really is, it suggests that like if you don't agree, like you're a bad person. And you even see other content creators. You should be they're talking about Colleen's bad response video. But a lot of these content creators, they're not even saying that she did something. They're saying this was a bad response to allegations that are happening. They won't give you their perspective on it because it's not worth it to them to deep dive into it. Mostly probably because a lot of them probably disagree with the public narrative, but they don't want to, a lot of times, the best criticism I probably got is, why are you talking about this, public? You're just going to get hate. And for me, I don't like not talking about a topic just because people might disagree with me. I think that's one of the problems is you have a lot of larger content creators who have a lot of they're very intelligent and they have good commentary, but they won't get involved into stuff that they disagree with if they know they're going to get a lot of heat. I find it to be like, I just don't want to be that person. People ask me to look into it. I looked into it and like, I'm going to commit to looking into it. I could have just easily said, oops, sorry guys. And I could have just moved forward. So
pull a red blanket out to a bull, if that makes sense, to kind of be like, well, I'm not biased because I don't like Colleen.
But I don't like Colleen.
Stop. You can't say I'm biased. I said I didn't like Colleen. Boop.
I can still be biased, but I don't like Colleen, so I don't care about her.
Boop, boop. Which isn't in order to sway criticism, I suppose. For people like...
It's interesting that she's assuming that like all of my intentions are like to play this weird methodical game. He's just saying this because he wants people to think, or she's trying to make it seem like I'm saying this to be like, oh, like, I don't know, push my bias. It's almost like conspiratorial. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Like... Papa Gut, who are these like debate lord internet types. When I'm saying debate lord types, I'm talking like Papa Gut, Destiny, the commentary bros, like these very like every time there's a.
Is it a compliment that I'm being compared to Destiny, or is it or is it bad? What's happening here?
Some sort of disagreement between two people, like debate.
Fat Destiny.
Debate me. It's like no.
I don't like debates, man. I don't like. Like I said, I have no problem being like. I don't want to be correct in this situation, or excuse me, I don't want to feel like I'm correct. I'd rather it would be great if somebody was like, this, here you go, here's proof of like massively meticulous, methodical, disgusting behavior from Colleen. I'd be like, yes, thank God I get to change. But I just can't because I don't feel that I'm wrong, and I'm not gonna fold just because people want me to be wrong. I want to be wrong. I don't like the hate, of course. But it is what it is. That's where I'm kind of operating.
I'm not going to go onto your platform with your fan base and be...
Well, I wouldn't want to talk to you.
Having to deal with everything under your terms.
I think the only person I'd probably actually talk to about this, and it would never happen, is like maybe Ethan Klein or something, because I feel like him and his research team, I know they did a video about Colleen, and they had like a big thing. Somebody who's not attached to the beauty community, because I have a hard time... I don't know. I have a hard time with some of those individuals, potentially their credibility. So, I don't want to talk to somebody that I could easily roll over, so maybe like Ethan has like a whole crew, and it's never going to happen, obviously. No problem with that. Well,
terms where you're
I don't know. I wouldn't talk to you. I don't know why you would think that.
going to actually propose or approach this in an emotionally charged way with the idea to humiliate me for personal reasons while disguising it as a structured argument.
I've never done that before, but okay.
Again, these people put being biased or not biased as a precipice of their argument and the main point that they're discussing, despite the fact that all arguments ever done ever present some sort of bias in them, because the bias is also present in the position in which they're coming for. If you want
to see something in this video here. I'm wondering why. I mean, if based on that video, maybe you would get that out of it, like, oh, he's just a debate lord. But I feel like I don't know why people would think I'm a debate lord. I think that in Adam's video, he had mentioned something along the lines of like, I had reached out to him to have a conversation when this whole thing was going on, and he took it as like I was just trying to debate him on like his situation. And you know what? I understand where he's coming from with that. That was never my intention. I just wanted to talk about it and kind of get his perspective on it and just see, you know, where he was coming from and, you know, to parse through it and see if I was wrong, because like I said, but I understand it's something that's very fresh to him and he's very frustrated, and I get that. Right. And so that makes perfect sense why he wouldn't want to talk to me and he would have that perspective, but it's just not a right perspective. Yeah, I miss you so much. I kind of figured she would have talked about this. So this is my conversation with, okay. So I know why Adam has that perspective, but I don't think that she actually has the perspective that I'm a debate lord. And the reason is because I had this Def Noodles conversation. And if she did watch the whole thing, which I think that she did, she said she watched all my stuff, that it seems like she knows my conversations, and that if you came out of that thinking I was trying to be like I was trying to be like reasonable in that whole thing, if you came out thinking that I wasn't, then I don't know what to tell you. You're weird. I don't know. So I have a hard time believing that she actually thinks I'm just a debate lord looking to win conversations. If she's seen me have conversations with people before, like Dennis. So maybe she does really think that. That's totally, I mean, I guess it's possible. Maybe she forgot that she saw this, or maybe she just said like, oh, well, I've only seen, you know, I don't know. I just don't know. I have a hard time believing that she actually thinks I'm a debate lord. I don't know. I don't think that she actually thinks that, but I could just be wrong. But I mean, you've seen me have like a reasonable conversation with at least one other person. So for you to jump to that, and this is the only conversation you've ever seen me do. So maybe she called it out in this video. But if you've only seen me do one conversation and it was a reasonable conversation, why would you assume that I'm just trying to debate people is my real question. But okay.
Want to disagree with me, I beg you to read one.
Why a lot of people hate her so much. But we're gonna take a deep breath. We're gonna try to be unbiased. She might have actually like thought like, okay, the mother said don't talk about this particular topic. Ballsy move showing the screenshot of what was said on the screen and not really reacting to it or responding to it particularly well. I don't even know what the context of this entire. I don't even know what's being talked about here. What is this clip supposed to show? Let me just read this. I've actually like thought like, okay, the mother said don't talk about this particular topic. Balls. We're trying to be unbiased. She might have actually like thought like, okay, the mother said don't talk about this particular topic. Ballsy move showing the. Okay, I know what I'm talking about now. This is like weird. There's almost no context here. A screenshot of what was said on the screen, and now. So what I'm talking about here is that there was this moment where Colleen had the issue with Adam, and then Adam's mom was like, hey, fuck off, basically. Don't talk about my son anymore. You know, solid move, unironically. And after that, Colleen had reached out to at least Cody and say, hey, the perspective against me is wrong. I didn't actually do these things that Adam is saying that I did, right? And people were going like, oh, look, she's reaching out into private to try to get other people to make videos for her because she's like this manipulative person. My argument, and I'm not even saying that I'm right, it was just something that I was throwing out there, was it's possible that she actually was trying to legitimately respect the wishes of Adam's mother and did reach out to Cody, maybe to get her to make a video about it that was reasonable, or maybe to tell her fans that she has a weirdly close attachment to, that she's actually not a bad person. Totally possible. And then if you read the messages she sent to Cody, like Cody's like, I will make a fucking hit piece. And Colleen says like, no, don't do that. I want to respect the mother's wishes. The only thing I'm saying there is that people are saying that she was trying to get Cody to make this hit piece. And like, this is proof that she's a manipulative person. All I'm doing is reading the screenshots and taking all the information. And and I think it's possible, it might not be what actually happened, but it's something to consider, that she was told by the mom not to talk to Adam anymore, or about Adam anymore. Adam made her video. Colleen didn't really know what to do. She started reaching out to people and saying like, oh, I didn't actually do this. It could have been to make a video to defend her. It could have been to make a video, or not to make a video at all, and just to tell her close fans that she's not a bad person. And then this Cody person took it out of control and made like a huge hit piece. But even Colleen, if you read through those messages to Cody, says, I would rather respect the wishes of the mother, like, and basically says, don't make a video. Should have been more firm about it. It's like, don't do that at all. She just says, I think we should respect the wishes of the mother, and then doesn't talk to Cody anymore until after Cody makes her video that like was like, Colleen's a bad person because of her past whatever. I don't know. Because like a while ago she made some inappropriate content. That's the perspective behind that. You might disagree, but it's like it's a reasonable aspect, because a lot of people are like, oh, she's just constantly using her fans to bully people. I don't necessarily get that from that one interaction with Cody, but I could be wrong. But reacting to it, responding to it particularly well.
That's the other thing. I feel like every time that I'm here, especially when we're talking about these types of people, I'm like, girl, I beg for you to read a book.
I just feel like it's weird that you're not showing. I had to remember the context of that video, because you didn't show anything there. You just kind of pulled up a clip of me talking with no context. Nobody understands what's even being said there, and then you're like, see, idiot. And it's like, what? Like, nobody is even gonna know what I'm saying with your clip there. Nobody's even gonna know. They're just gonna be like, oh, Papa Gut just said a thing. What did I say? I don't even know what I'm referring to. I had to like think about it for a second. But okay.
I beg you to be literate. Like, that's all I can really ask for is like, read a book. You know?
No, thank you. What book? I don't know.
And it's like, they'll put being biased or trying to not be biased ahead of like being decent as like a human being.
I don't think I was being undecent there. Okay.
Even when approaching like sensitive subject arguments, I think I'm gonna have to call this one.
Maybe I could have been more sensitive to this topic. I think that's a fair criticism. I feel like maybe I wasn't being sensitive enough to like some of these situations, specifically Adam, and I totally understand that. But okay.
Papa Gut rhetoric about something, because I realize how much I'm throwing in here, because a lot of this wasn't even.
Oh, you make a Papa Gut rhetoric video? Okay.
My nose. Oop. Well, it is what it is. Regardless, it's more of the same.
What does that mean?
Research streams are not really here to pick apart like the gaps in his reasoning, despite the fact that he presented it as a deep dive when it's clearly I'm finding this out for the first time stream. But
well, yeah, that's what it is. I mean, what should I call that? Wouldn't that? I feel like, okay, whatever.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to be mean about the next one, the video. That's about 35 minutes long, because that one Adam McIntyre also reacted to in a stream. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
But this one
is going to be the longest fucking reaction. Holy shit.
Is worse.
Okay.
The next video Papa Gut made was called The Colleen Ballinger Situation Has Gotten Out of Hand, which opens up with Papa Gut saying that he just posted his extremely comprehensive deep dive on Adam McIntyre, immediately mispronouncing the name of the main person in this whole story.
So I don't think that matters, to be honest with you. I like me mispronouncing.
Candice Larson became a member.
What the okay, that was weird. I'm not on stream, but my stream elements is on, so somebody's thing renewed. Weird. Okay, I don't really think it means anything that I mispronounce people's names. I think it's just kind of like a lazy attempt to try to make it seem like I have no credibility. But okay. Well, it's been 3 days since I posted my very comprehensive breakdown on this Adam McIntyre and Colleen Ballinger situation. McIntyre.
Wow, people can go, well, Mika, you know, I feel like him saying the name wrong wouldn't like denounce the whole argument.
It doesn't.
I'm just giggling and kikiing about the irony of like being like, I'm the only one who did this right, and I'm the only one who's comprehensive, and you can't even get their name right.
Okay.
Especially when no one else is getting it wrong. That's the other thing. It's not like if you watched a bunch of videos, it was like all of us were saying Adam McIntyre, and in reality it was Adam McIntyre. It's like nobody's been getting it wrong. So it just means like you didn't watch anything else. Papa Gut, so now I'm reading my notes more because my head's empty and I don't have much time left to record. Papa Gut says the trauma is from the backlash of Colleen Ballinger's fans, stating, and I quote, Papa Gut is saying that the trauma that Adam dealt with was not from actually the interaction with Colleen Ballinger, but rather the backlash from Colleen's fans.
I think that there's maybe not all of it. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I find it's interesting that when it comes to the internet, we understand that like influencers, micro, macro, whatever, are profoundly lucky. But we see every day, like actual celebrity people, like, you know, that they're getting addicted to drugs and having these huge problems here, there. We see a lot of child actors, young people that are thrust into the world of acting, develop like eating disorders, and they have like these breakdowns, and they you know, they have all these huge problems. We're seeing every day that influencers are talking about like mental health problems associated with getting negativity and backlash against them, and how toxic it can be for an entire group of unhinged people with massive amounts of anonymity, bully people relentlessly to a disproportionate level. And I see, like, how can we not factor that in massively to what's happening to Adam? I feel like that's a huge part of it, is all the attention and the stress of constantly being barraged with hate in general. And I know people might say, well, Colleen specifically asked for them to do that. I haven't seen anything of Colleen saying, go bully the relentless shit out of Adam for 3 years. There seems to be a lot of content creators who have made content about it. But I like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she'll show that to me.
But the thing is, Adam's backlash was pretty minute compared to the backlash that he would face with coming out with a video.
What?
And Adam stated that he felt a sort of trauma while recording the video. In 2020, I mean.
Well, that strength is what I'm saying then. Like, there's almost like almost a traumatic experience associated with expressing that publicly, and the anxiousness and anxiety of how people were going to perceive it. Doesn't. So
that argument, again, doesn't have anything to stand on.
Wait, no, that strength. What?
Face with coming out with. Thing is, Adam's backlash was pretty minute compared to the backlash that he would face with coming out with a video.
What?
And Adam stated that he felt a sort of trauma while recording the video. In 2020, I mean. So that argument, again.
Or is she trying to say that, like, I truly just don't understand what the fuck she's trying to say there. Give me. Is she trying to say that recalling the events of the past might have brought some... Maybe that's what she's saying. I don't know what the fuck she's trying to say.
Compared to the backlash that he would face with coming out with a video. It's not from actually the interaction with Colleen Ballinger, but rather the backlash from Colleen's fans.
I think a significant amount of it is the fact that it's like a very big public spectacle that's like absolutely, and people are just being hateful back and forth, left, right, up, down, sideways.
But the thing is, Adam's...
And I also talked about from like a mental health perspective, like when you deal with the traumatic experiences, you don't want somebody to be over-affirming or under-affirming. You need somebody to meet you where you're at. And I feel like there's also a traumatic aspect that tagged onto it from a public atmosphere of being over-affirming to what's going on. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be empathetic or affirming. But again, I feel that the groomer narrative is the over-affirming aspect because it simply doesn't exist. There's no... I don't see any grooming. And so... I hope I did a good job of showing why I feel that way. This person certainly hasn't. Okay, let's.
Backlash was pretty minute compared to the backlash that he would face with coming out with a video.
She's not really communicating very well.
And Adam stated that he felt a sort of trauma while recording the video.
Did he say that it was because he knew a bunch of people were going to weigh in on it and it upset him, or did he say that just recalling the events were upsetting to him? I don't. She's just not very specific about that. But okay.
In 2020, I mean. So that argument again doesn't have anything to stand on. Who's surprised?
You haven't made a point there. You know, she's referring to his 2020 video. The recollection of the event might have really upset him, or maybe the fact that he knew it was going to be put into the atmosphere and people were going to bully him. It doesn't speak negatively to anything I just said.
But Papa Gus says the following, and I quote, and I wrote it down. I listened to it like 3 times to make sure I got every word.
It is.
The same people who are now very much in defense of Adam and apologizing to him are the same ones who had bullied and harassed him and broke him down mentally on behalf of Colleen, I guess, despite...
Oh, is that what I said? I guess that was me saying that was with their perspective.
The fact that I imagine she never told you guys to do this.
Absolutely honest with you is because if there is a trauma there, it's not necessarily because of Colleen, but really the backlash and the outfall, or the out. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The fallout is the word I was looking for. Anyway, for the past 3 years, to my understanding, the same people who are now very much in defense of Adam and apologizing to him are the same ones that have bullied and harassed him and broken him down mentally on behalf of Colleen, I guess, despite the fact that I imagine she never told you guys to do this. I think it's Colleen's privilege that after they had their falling out, she got to disconnect from this situation and no longer was a part of her, at least. Yeah, and that disconnected aspect is me talking about mentally. How Colleen was able to just move past and be like, okay, I've said what I had to say and I'm done and over with it. Whereas Adam didn't get afforded that privilege because he's been constantly harassed.
Well, this is despite, if you were looking at this comprehensive stream, the voice notes that have come out where Colleen said that she was trying to figure out things on Adam, trying to see if people could defend her on behalf of her kind of loyalty to them, against Adam, the presentation of the screenshots that Cody brought, that the Weenies brought, that Adam himself.
It's just, when I look at her page.
To stream the voice notes that have come out where Colleen said that she was trying to figure out things on Adam, trying to see if people could defend her on behalf of her kind of loyalty to them against Adam.
Well, we talked about that Cody defense thing already. Sorry. So I was looking into it. I looked through Ethan Klein's live stream mostly. I said something along the lines of like Colleen Ballinger wasn't specifically telling people to harass Adam for 3 years. And that's turned into like, well, she did reach out to content creators and ask them to defend her publicly. Sure. I don't think that that's the same thing as relentlessly harassing somebody for 3 years over an isolated situation. And that still goes to what I was saying, where, again, her having, like, reaching out to people, potentially, like with Cody, we already talked about them, like, hey, listen, can you defend me in some capacity? Which, again, she even said don't to Cody because Cody wanted to make a hit piece. That doesn't equate to the 3 years of harassment that ensued from that. There are people who were grown, like Cody was a grown adult who decided to defend Colleen, even if Colleen asked them to, because they're bad people for however many years that this was happening for. The content creators that were milking this and harassing him for 3 years, that is a public hive mind perspective. That's not just Colleen reached out to people. Maybe she did try to get people to go after Adam. 3 years, that is a different animal of the 3 years. The separation of like, oh, Colleen reached out to people to try to get them to help defend her against Adam when she felt like she couldn't say anything because the mother told her not to, versus for the past 3 years, Adam's been being bullied. Colleen didn't explicitly be like, hey, bully him for 3 years. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to the sensationalization of the internet and constantly going after somebody for an irregular period of time, right? So those two things aren't the same necessarily. You can absolutely put blame onto Colleen, but if this was something that happened in like a small town, for instance, then the drastic mental anguish wouldn't have been there because it wouldn't have been continuing on for 3 years. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And I think a lot of the situation going on is 3 years of harassment because the internet is toxic, and it's all that anger, that feelings, and those emotions are going through Adam's head, and then he's recalling the events with a lot of frustration and anger, understandably so, but okay.
That have come out where Colleen said that she was trying to figure out things on Adam, trying to see if people could defend her on behalf of her kind of loyalty to them against Adam. The presentation of the screenshots that Cody brought, that the Weenies brought, that Adam himself has brought out, but no, we're all just reactionary opportunists. I would like that quoted.
Some people are, man. It's a hell of a system that's going on here.
I got for the Rolling Stone article. Please call Rolling Stone a bunch of opportunists that never cared about Adam McIntyre in the first place because they're just a bunch of drama channels that
Well, probably. Do you think that Rolling Stone doesn't even know who Adam is?
Make videos every time Trisha Paytas farts? Yeah. Anyway.
Right. So listen, I haven't read the Rolling Stone article on this. But here's the thing, how it usually works, right? This story has become very large, and I guarantee you that pretty much every single news article that's talking about this topic is talking about it in a way where they're like, hey, people are saying Colleen is a groomer. I'm not going to subscribe to the Rolling Stones to read the article. These are the allegations against them. This is what people are saying, and they're playing a game of plausible deniability so that they don't get sued. That's been any article that I've read like one article about it. It's like they're recanting, hey, here's what happened, and here's what people are claiming. They're not making a prescription, like a factual prescription of like this absolutely is happening. That's not what they're actually doing. So, okay.
Noodle doozles. Papa Gut calls the beauty community opportunistic for talking about this, whilst reducing the situation to Adam being dramatic and everyone else being opportunistic.
I hope I didn't communicate that. I don't think I was trying to say he was being dramatic. But okay.
On behalf of his wife's education on social work and the comprehensive mental health conversations he has with his wife. Not his education. Sure. Not
Fair
his knowledge. And he just says, I do research. I've done where? Citation needed, girl. Because like before,
Okay.
you know, again, Papa, if you just paused, Mika, where are your citations? Usually in the description, I have literally APA citations of the books that I'm referencing.
Okay.
In the case of this one, because I've talked kind of just briefly about different philosophers and stuff, I'll just pop in. If you look, Papa Guts, or whoever's reacting to this, or if anybody, or whoever you're watching, whoever's watching, there's a playlist down below, or a, not playlist, a Amazon wish list, because I'm not affiliate, so I can't just put like buying lists up of, it's called Rhetoric Readings. Those are all the books that I've already read on
Cool.
argumentation and philosophy and how to position arguments and stuff like that, along with a 4-year
It sounds like you're the debate lord. I've read a lot of books on how to wait. What?
it's called Rhetoric Readings. Those are all the books that I've already read on argumentation and philosophy and how to position arguments and stuff like that,
It sounds like you're the debate bro, just based on the way that you're talking. Okay.
along
Cool.
with a 4-year honors degree from the University of Waterloo in English literature and rhetoric with a minor in philosophy. So that's my citation for my education, the books that I've read, and the research that I've done. Please provide some. And I'm not talking about the videos you watched. I'm talking about the research you've done allegedly on grooming, on mental health, on how you
Well, what makes this grooming? Does she ever talk
want to
about why she
position
thinks it's
like an
grooming?
argument. Because if we're talking about my knowledge on things like interaction with kids,
That's her main video, by the way. It just keeps coming up. It's the, so that's I wonder if she specifically talked about the grooming. She does citate, or she does the chapters in her videos, so maybe she specifically talks about the grooming aspect in her video.
screen stuff, that's almost completing a master's degree from a top university in the country. I'm just not as willing to say where it is because I don't want people to call the school that I go to. But yeah, that's where we're at.
Okay.
I'll tell you when I graduate. Give me till December, okay?
Well, that's not the type of grooming it is. You don't understand grooming, and I do take offense to that because I do understand it. I understand it deeply, and I do. I really try to educate myself on these topics. I know people think it's incredibly cringe, but I have mental health conversations on a daily basis. Maybe she'll tell me what grooming really is. Maybe that. I mean, unironically, maybe she'll give her perspective, and then we can clear it up. And I do my best to educate myself on these topics. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that just because my wife is a social worker, that means that I have an educated perspective on this from a college perspective. But we do have robust mental health conversations, and these are the topics that they include. And I just want to be clear, that doesn't make me instantly right. But I would say that, especially considering the content that I've made historically, I try to be very delicate about that's me referring to like canceling actual predators
situations.
And I try to be very strong in my opinions, whether they are received publicly or not. I mean, received well.
I think that's one of the aspects of this as well, because there's a lot of content creators who are not going to disagree. He's saying all these things while driven by elitist opinions.
Is she going to tell us what she thinks grooming is? Because that would be the great time to be like, yeah, Papa Gut, grooming is this.
That the content that is made by primarily, again, as I mentioned before, NB people, women.
You're trying to virtue signal right now. I'm not trying to be rude, but like you're trying to make it seem like I'm some kind of like I am bigoted towards women and LGBTQ people. And so like it's fine to say like, hey, you're wrong and you don't understand what grooming is, and that's fine. I want you to give me that argument. I want you to give me that argument. But you're just saying that because I'm criticizing a community that's primarily LGBTQ and women, that I must be bigoted towards those groups of people. And I just think that that's a lazy argument to make. And it comes off as like a virtue signal to me. You're just trying to. It's just I don't. You're just trying to say like, oh, you're bad because you don't like these groups of people. Based on what? Based on nothing. Based on what? You know, again, I could be ignorant to things, of course, but I mean, my platform is pretty well heavily dedicated to having conversations that are pro-woman and that are pro-LGBTQ. Like I'm anti-manosphere stuff. So it's just a silly suggestion to make.
Or gay men as kind of just like stupid gossip.
Well, it is stupid gossip. That is what the drama community is. People know that. People know it's stupid gossip. You guys know it's stupid gossip. It's not because it's women and stuff that are engaged in it. It's because it is stupid gossip. Most people acknowledge this, no? Most of the drama beauty community shit is stupid gossip. It's a tabloid. That's what people like about it. Like, just be upfront about it. Like, yeah, it's just dumb gossip. We're just fucking around. You know? That is what most of the community talks about, is stupid gossip. It has nothing to do with gay people or anything like that. It's just what most of the content is. That's why they call it drama. But okay.
This kind of a narrative, it's a misogynist adjacent narrative that's been
very
prevalent for a long time.
Sure.
There is a text by, I want to say it's Maria Edgeworth, talking about it's I wrote a paper on it. I'll see if I can find it. If I do remember what paper it is, I'll put it here. But it's a paper about like how women's rhetoric in their discussion place is done. This is kind of this idea that she was talking about how men typically reduce like what women talk about to like petty stuff, while in reality they actually like.
The drama community is petty stuff, though. Like, it's the same thing as the commentary bro community. It's like full of petty bullshit. Like, there's a lot of communities that are full of petty bullshit. That community just specifically is also petty bullshit. Like, what are you talking about? The things that women typically talk, that's not the things typically women talk about. This is the trauma community. Are you saying that, like, all women only? I don't understand. What you're saying is just, it's just an attempt to try to, like, insert identity politics into it to try to make me look bad. But okay.
Confide in each other about complex topics and things like that. It's kind of how the drama channels are formed as well in this community that they have. But because they're not dude bros who lack humanistic, you know, ideology and lack general concept of how emotions and connections are intertwined into the YouTube sphere and the presence of these arguments, you're not going to see that. He also condescends people while literally being wrong, saying that he recommends that nobody actually cares about Adam and they're just trying to get money off of this.
I think that people are very opportunistic, and unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't care about him. They should care more about him, and then they don't, and they're just being opportunistic. And I think that if, like, you know, that's why his videos that talk about Colleen are like very well received, and then the videos where he doesn't talk about Colleen are not nearly as well received because people are being very opportunistic about this Colleen situation, and they're here for the tea, sis.
Because nobody's recommended that he goes to therapy.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that Adam on social media had talked about that he was seeking one. But I'll give a little bit of...
Well, that's nobody recommending it to him. My understanding is one podcast recommended it to him. It's good that I believe he found one. That's good. But that doesn't mean other people are recommending it. My argument is that they're here to turn a very real and very upsetting moment in Adam's life into drama, because it gives them something to talk about at work, and it's become very sensationalized, and that's why they're hyping it up more than it should be, which is somebody who did an incredibly inappropriate thing but is not a groomer.
Grace to some extent to this, because Adam's video about having a new therapist came out 3 days after this video. But again, Adam had been talking about it on social media, but alas.
That's him. Funny therapist isn't the same as people recommending. Okay.
And that no one would believe it's grooming or that anything is truly bad because no one takes drama channels seriously. So what he said.
What did I say?
After this video. But again, Adam had been talking about it on social media, but alas. Weighs in that no one would believe it's grooming or that anything is truly bad because.
Did I say truly bad? What? If I said that, I'm just a fucking idiot. I think is that what I said?
Because no one takes drama channels seriously. So what he's saying is that because the drama channels have cover dates, nobody will ever take it seriously ever again.
Did I actually say that? What, did she show a clip of that? I don't remember. What, if I said that, I'm a fucking idiot, and you could stab me in the balls. I think what I'm saying is that the drama community is very toxic, and disagreeing with them isn't worth it for a lot of creators, and a lot of them will just stay out of these topics so that they don't get any criticism. Did I don't think I said it exactly, which maybe I did. I misspoke or something. I don't know. Okay.
This, again, is despite the fact that mainstream media has now began to cover it.
Right. Mainstream media is different than other creators on like the atmosphere of YouTube. Those media sites, again, are covering in a way it's like, these are the allegations against this person, because they don't care either. The media, I mean, unless you think that like Rolling Stone actually does, they don't care about what's going on. They care that it makes a lot of clicks. This has been a constant media problem, especially since we hit the 24/7 news cycle after 9/11, is that there's constantly needs to be like a constant blast of information. It's not about what is and isn't true. It's about what can and cannot be sensationalized, right? And this is like a fundamental media problem. It's something that obviously is very invasive into YouTube. We see it all the time with different different type of, especially breaking news content where people sensationalize the fuck out of it, where they're just trying to get the information out constantly. And so these articles are saying things along the lines of like, hey, this is what people are claiming. This is what people are saying about Colleen. They're not taking a stance on it because they want to play plausible deniability. They don't want to get sued. And that's how they're talking about it. But okay.
And it has picked up beyond the YouTube sphere despite drama channels talking about it. And, people might kind of come at me for saying, like, maybe these things haven't happened yet or whatever. But regardless, he's had 2 weeks to respond from beyond this point.
Who, me?
So, and as far as what I've done, I've checked right now, it's crickets.
Hey, who, me? I'm confused.
And, people might kind of come at me for saying, like, maybe these things haven't happened yet or whatever. But regardless, he's had 2 weeks to respond from beyond this point.
So about me?
So, and as far as what I've done, I've checked right now, it's crickets.
Oh, crickets. Okay, gotcha.
For full transparency, this video was recorded on June 27th of 2023. That was the day before the ukulele apology came out. I was editing this the next day to put it out. However, that video made me drop everything in order to get that done. That being said, we are now July 2nd, and Papa God has watched the ukulele apology, called a career ending. Other than that, not too much decent retraction. Also, that being said,
But yeah, I affirmed that it was really inappropriate but not grooming.
now Cody Rants has come out with an apology in their description that we're also going to cover, given that that's kind of intertwined with this story. But
Okay.
yeah. Constantly references biases again and again to a point that's
Sure.
like extremely annoying,
That's true.
and blames Colleen's irresponsibility from not being a traditional celebrity. And then he can't
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a reasonable point. I'm talking about how traditional celebrities get like specific information on how to interact with everything, and that blueprint wasn't displayed for a lot of micro celebrities. And I talked about this earlier.
He says he can't trust people because they hate Miranda. He's
Yeah, what I'm saying is that because the narrative has already come out of control and people are interacting as if she is a groomer and then taking information and then trying to adhere it to that narrative rather than hearing the information and creating a narrative, that any additional information that comes out is not going to be put out in a way that is reasonable. For instance, like we had said before, she said like, oh, she was asking for pictures of Adam's ass. Like she said something along those lines. When Adam was like, oh, I'm looking good today. And then she says, pics, Adam? And then he says, fuck off, bitch, or something in that capacity. I just seen the thing. He clearly knew that it wasn't meant to be sexual. But like, it's the portrayal of that information that it suggests when it's like she was trying to get pictures of his ass. No, she wasn't. We all know that if you get the context. When you have people like this that are filtering it like that, when they're like they're boiling it down and removing all the context from it, it's because they want you to believe a certain thing. It's the same when people are like, she was asking if she was a virgin. No, she wasn't. She was very inappropriately recommending Q&A questions. Right? It's wrong, but it's not the intention that when you say she was asking if she's a virgin, you're trying to imply that the intention there is that she was trying to sexually exploit him, which isn't the case. And that's what I'm speaking to, is that the narrative's already gotten under control. Whether you disagree with me or not, you know that people are portraying the context of the situation maliciously. And that's just kind of the reality of the situation. And so it's hard to trust people who are portraying information in a way that is wrong.
inflated the concept that being contrarian means you're unbiased.
Okay.
Not following the main narrative of the mass means you're not biased.
I think that you instantly assuming that I'm trying to be contrarian with no other information other than because I disagree with you has already, we'll debate it, has already poisoned the well. There's no way that you could ever interact with my content in a way where you are being honest, because you're assigning the label that I'm being a contrarian. Because it's a lazy argument, just as lazy as me constantly just yelling everybody's bias. By the way, like, I mean, there's same criticisms to me in some areas, absolutely. But like, this one I'm trying to be actually intelligent and articulate in what I'm saying. And you could absolutely say that I failed at that before, but I don't think that it's fair based on the way that I made my content in general, even the other ones, that I'm just trying to be a contrarian. I don't think that that's a fair assessment of who I am. But maybe I just portrayed myself so poorly that it comes off as such.
Your bias in your desire to position yourself differently.
That's not what I want.
You're developed in your own bias for this person to be the one to get all the... I've described this before, right? If 1,000 people bet on the same horse and 50 people bet on another horse, even if the 1,000 people bet double or nothing, the 50 people who bet on the other horse will get way more if the other horse wins. Does that make sense? Gambling analogy. Point is...
Give me like a second. I think what she's trying to say is that her perspective is I'm having an intentionally contrarian perspective in the hopes that Colleen ends up being right so that I come out of the situation looking like the smart guy. I think that's what she's saying. It's an interesting strategy. Never thought of it like that before. That doesn't make any sense, because if I was... there's like, why would I? That doesn't make any sense to me, because what you're saying is I'm risking destroying my credibility to intentionally lie in the hopes that it would skyrocket my credibility. It doesn't make any sense to me. That's just never how I operated my platform. But okay, interesting. Interesting.
It's this I'm gonna bet it all in case I'm right thing.
Yeah.
Now a lot of this is assumption of intention, but it's just because I can't see any other reason.
I just disagree. That's the other reason. There's no way you couldn't see that.
Because everything, it personally just seems so illogical to me that I can't figure it out. And again, people might want to pick on me for bringing up my education and this and all that kind of stuff, but I'm just trying to show that I have done this beyond just a silly little YouTube channel because I'm a woman, and he might think I'm within the drama sphere or something, so he just doesn't think I have any credibility to talk about this. So I wanted to bring that up. Based his entire situation on being unable to separate a petty fight from her fans, between like her fans and inappropriate reactions. People are unable to understand that the fans are just being petty, because Miranda didn't want to talk to them anymore. That's what I kind of gathered from it.
What?
To talk about this, so I wanted to bring that up. Based his entire situation on being unable to separate a petty fight from her fans, between like her fans and inappropriate reactions. People are unable to understand that the fans are just being petty, because Miranda didn't want to talk to them anymore.
I have no fucking idea what she's talking about. What does that mean?
That's what I kind of gathered from it.
What? What did I say?
Based his entire situation on being unable to separate a petty fight from her fans, between like her fans and inappropriate reactions. People are unable to understand that the fans are just being petty, because Miranda didn't want to talk to them anymore. That's what I kind of gathered from it.
I have no fucking idea what you're talking about. Are you talking about when I made a point about how part of Adam's frustration is because he was no longer able to talk to Colleen, and that upset him? Yeah, I think that's a factor. I think Adam loved Colleen, since a fan since 9 years old, I believe, or it was 11 years old, and then it ultimately ended when he was 17 because of that tweet that came out, and she got she got a lot of backlash for it, and so like she did partially blame it on him, and I think that was really shitty scumfuck behavior. But if I was a really big fan of somebody from the age of 9, or let's just say 11, I think it was 9, but let's just say it's 11. From 11 to 17, significant portion of like my was teenage years, or all of my teenage, and that person no longer wanted to work with me anymore, I would be very upset. That's huge. That's a loss. I mean, honestly, I mean, you could consider that like a traumatic experience. That's a loss. That's destructive to somebody. Like, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a point. I would be super upset. And that goes into the whole conversation about parasocial relationships and why Colleen shouldn't have been so close to Adam. Or maybe not parasocial relationships, just like fan, celebrity relationships. Absolutely, I can see that as being traumatic. I think that's part of what's so distressing to him. Okay.
He says that Adam is still obsessed with Colleen Ballinger because he wanted an apology personally and publicly.
I know what you're talking about. There was a tweet that I had seen, and it was Adam that was like, I will only stop talking about this if I get a private and public apology. And maybe this was just a misread from me, and you can criticize me. To me, that just... I mean, I guess you could argue that's closure, but for some reason, to me, it just seems so bizarre to say I will stop talking about it. It's almost like almost like blackmail. Maybe that's disproportionate, but it's not. He's not saying like I really wish Colleen would give me a private and public apology. It's I will stop talking about you if you talk to me again. That's how. Maybe I'm wrong in my interpretation, but yeah, I think that's reasonable. If it's like I would really appreciate an apology from Colleen, excuse me, that makes perfect sense. But like I will stop talking about this if you reach out to me. That doesn't add up to me. That seems, and maybe the word obsession isn't proper, but that just doesn't seem congruent with the way that people would typically react into that situation. It's almost like holding it over your head, like I'll stop talking shit about you if you will talk to me once again. I think that still plays, and I think Adam still has a desire to be some kind of a friend of Colleen's. Maybe not now, but I think that speaks to that.
Now, I would have done a slight little meme overlay, and maybe I'll go through my old Deaf Noodles video and try to find one, but of like Papa Guts, like rampage of like I demand that Deaf Noodles apologizes to me.
What? When did I say that? What? I don't think I even did that. What? Are you talking about when he made fun of like a traumatic experience that was close to me? I don't want to be specific about it. Are you talking about the video that I made where I was like, oh, this is defamation or something? I don't even know what the fuck you're talking about.
Because like it's just funny because, like, why...
What?
Girl, the stones of glass houses or whatever they say, like... So you're obsessed with deaf noodles.
I don't even know how to compare these two things together. I don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. Okay.
This video seems to align a petty fixation on vindicating Colleen as a means of trashing drama channels and putting it under the guise of being on a moral high ground and deciding what position he wants to take as a way of defining what grooming is, because he's some sort of weird, like, catch a predator type on the internet, I suppose.
Me? What?
Vindicating Colleen as a means of trashing drama channels and putting it under the guise of being on a moral high ground and deciding what position he wants to take as a way of defining what grooming is, because he's some sort of weird, like, catch a predator type on the internet.
Well, I just hold words to high esteem because they should be held as such. The same way where, like, people are calling LGBTQ people groomers. Like, I speak against that as well. I know this isn't quite the same, but it's a comparison, I suppose.
Even though
and I'm not really a catch a predator type of a person.
A lot of these people are usually, like, super weird. If I remember correctly, the guy who exposed EDP was, like, running around in Target, like, yelling at employees for the Pride merch.
Well, do you mean the guy, Alex Rosen, that I had a conversation with and I confronted him all of his bad behavior? I'm not a catch a predator person. I don't set people up, but I'll usually use my platform to call out bad people. And when I was, again, very impactful on TikTok, I did that, but I'm not a catch a predator person. Really? Oh, it's like, okay, interesting.
I know they're not the same person, but I'm saying, like, it's like, just because you're exposing bad people once in a while doesn't mean, like...
Well, I'm just curious, why not, I don't understand, why not tell me what you, like, what's your perspective on grooming? I feel like if this was meant to be comprehensive, why didn't you give me that? Like, hey, Papa Gut, you know what? This is what grooming really is. Where's that? You're just saying, okay, whatever.
You know, the clock's right. A broken clock's right twice a day. You know what I mean? So Adam responded to this in a live stream called It's Not Grooming that I'll tag down below, where he adds details that Papa Gut got wrong, in which there were many.
Yeah, let me hear him. Let's hear him.
And I will link that down below. So let's go into part 2. So since scripting of the first video on this...
I remember that video that, like, I believe Adam asserted I was some kind of a pedophile, so I don't really have much of an interest in watching it.
Mainstream media outlets were beginning to put out articles, which of these mainstream media outlets are including Rolling Stone, NBC, Huffington Post, and Time Magazine is working on one right now. For the sake of brevity, we're going to go through Rolling Stone and Huffington Post, 2 articles in which Adam McIntyre himself spoke very highly of. Now, 1, I'm out of time to film, and because I have, like, a job and I go to school and a bunch of yeehaw whatever, but 2, because I want to read off excerpts on screen and stuff, the rest of this video, as far as this part, is going to be done via voiceover. So you're going to see...
Okay, so I guess that's the end of that. Okay. So I guess we'll do the last... Okay. I guess she's not going to talk about grooming at all. She's just going to assert that it's true. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Listen, like... Grooming is really inherently against children when it comes to, like, being sexual in some capacity, or trying to groom them into either a sexual relationship or a gang or some kind of illegal activity. We've changed that to mean exploitation of labor, which has never been showed. Again, her doing unpaid internships is an exploitation of labor. Having people send her ideas for content is an exploitation of labor. As far as her grooming people to potentially have them be friends with her so she could talk about her relationships, that's just not grooming. It's inappropriate specifically because they're kids. But this deep-seated, profound, incredibly exploitative and manipulative and abusive, it just doesn't exist. You know, her sometimes being manipulative isn't the same thing as you developing a relationship with somebody with the intentionality of it being, like, exploitative in a deeply illegal way. Again, like child abuse. I don't think. Okay, I mean, I was kind of hoping that I'd come into this video learning, like, with any perspective, but it's just nothing. It's kind of a waste. But okay, cool.